His signature green tongue and animalistic behavior kept me up all night long as a child. He's an actor, an author, but you know him as an animal. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome George the Animal Steele.
Hey, you.
Well, I guess what I should say is it's George the Animal Steele, but also the gentleman who portrayed him, Mr. Jim Myers. Jim, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I've been blessed, believe me, in many ways.
We will mention it a lot, but we are based out of the Northeast, and there are some exciting events coming up that you will be a part of. On June 27th, you'll be a part of the New England Fan Fest in Providence, Rhode Island. Have you attended many fan fests over the years, and what are your thoughts about meeting the fans that grew up with you?
Oh, I really enjoy it. I've done a lot of them. I haven't done any personal appearances the last year. I've had some health challenges. So I'm really excited to be uncaged and be back out there again.
All right. Now, there's going to be a ton of people there, a ton of your old colleagues, people like Bret Hart, Jim Ross, Bill Goldberg, and many others will be there. Is there anybody that you know of that you're looking to talk to again, some of your old peers maybe?
Oh, whatever happens, I'll be prepared to do it.
All right.
Now,
I'm more excited about seeing fans, really.
All right. So for fans who can't make the trip to Rhode Island, have no fear. Mr. Myers will also be at our friends over at Collector's Realm doing a signing on June 28th at the Duchess Marketplace in Fishkill, New York. With things like the WWE Encyclopedia and the WWE Network, do you get to meet fans that may have never gotten to see you wrestle live before?
You know what? I haven't ran into many of those. The little guys that come up and say, George, and I look at them, they're 7 or 8 years old. I haven't really been on TV since 1989 on a regular basis. So I say, well, how do you know me? And they say, well, we play you in the video games. I say, do you make me win? And a lot of them have the action figures and so on, as collectors. So I'm talking about kids that are 7 or 8, 9 years old. Are kind of up to date on my character.
That's we do have to ask you, do you spend any time watching wrestling today?
Not very often. Not very often. The business is a great business, but it's changed so much. It's not what we did, and back then there was a lot of art in working the matches, and that art has been pretty much lost. Now it's pretty much scripted all the way through.
Now, you, like you said, you don't watch it a lot, but I'm sure that there's some big names that pop out at you. Is there anybody that's wrestling now that you think could probably hang with, you or any of the guys that you wrestled with back then?
Yeah, I think, in fact, one of the guys that is kind of a superstar right now, when he was about 12 years old, was right here in the living room with his mom and dad, Randy Orton.
Oh, okay.
And he's a pretty talented young man that can actually wrestle.
Yeah.
Now, not too long ago, you wrote an autobiography of sorts entitled "Animal." Did you feel good to be able to get all that out on paper?
Yeah, it was very interesting because my book is pretty much about overcoming a lot of different handicaps, and as I was writing the book, I started seeing my own life in the rear view mirror of life, and I could see how God was touching me before I ever really had accepted Him. So it was really a touching experience for me.
Now, speaking of that book, we read it, and we think your story of how you got into professional wrestling is just fascinating. Would you care to share some of that with us?
Well, it's kind of unbelievable. I was not a wrestling fan. In fact, I never watched wrestling. I was a football guy out of Michigan State, and I had blown my knee a little bit, so I had started teaching in 1961 for $4,300 a year. I had 2 children, a third one on the way, and my wife gave me that look, like we need to eat. And I was looking for a job as a bouncer in the bar with a friend of mine. It was good. I found out that you don't get hired if you're drinking some beer and have a buddy with you as a bouncer in a bar. So about 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, he talked me into calling the local promoter. My friend was a huge wrestling fan. So I called Bert Ruby, the Detroit promoter back in the day, and woke him up. And strangely, he invited me over the next day. And from there, I started wrestling under a mask as a student. It took about maybe 3 or 4 months to get acclimated in the gym, and also to get my tights and my wrestling boots and all that stuff put together. And we were off and running around the Detroit area and Michigan area, a little bit in Indiana and a little bit in Ohio. As a student, I wore a mask and wore a cap and gown, and lo and behold, I started doing real well at that, at that level, and was getting a lot of work with a lot of great workers of the 50s and 40s. Guys like, you probably don't know them, but Leapin' Larry Shane and Lou Klein and Crusher Cortez. These are guys that were back then just monumental workers. So I learned from the best, and then an opportunity came along, and I ended up in Pittsburgh. Bruno Sammartino, you probably heard of him.
Yep.
Came to Detroit with an entourage. He was wrestling Bulldog Brower, and they spotted me there, and I was invited to go to Pittsburgh to wrestle Bruno. Now, I think a lot of this was put together by a guy that was also one of my mentors, Gino Brito. And so I went to Pittsburgh. I had my mask and cap and gown, and they said, no, we don't want that. We want you. And I said, well, I don't want to use my real name. And so one of the fellows there said, well, this is a Steel City. Let's call him Jim Steele. I said, I don't like the Jim Steele. Somebody else said George. So that part of my body is only about 43 years old now. It was in 1967.
Wow.
Well, there was also a part of the book that said that you were actually a teacher at that point, which is just amazing to me to think that back then you were teaching and wrestling. Were there any challenges that you could see with doing both of those at the time?
Well, it's a challenge all the time. I taught from 1961, and I retired from teaching in January of 86. I wrestled in the WWF and the Pittsburgh thing. Started in 1967, and I was there until 1989. But I was also a school teacher and coach at all that time. So, I always looked at my full-time job as teaching and coaching, and my part-time job that made it so that I could afford to teach and coach as my wrestling career. So it's a little bit backwards. Most guys wrestle full-time. I did not do that. I'd go back and teach during the school year and coach football and wrestling.
Now, we just heard how you got the name George Steele, but how did you get the moniker The Animal?
Have you ever seen a picture of me? Have you ever seen me in the ring?
Oh, yeah. I didn't know if there was maybe another kind of a story about how it came about, but...
Well, there is. When I first went to the Northeast in the WWF, they called me the Detroit Destroyer. But because of the hair and what was going on in the ring, the fans started calling me an animal. And I would get on the microphone, I'm not an animal, I'm a people. And, I used to do my own interviews and talk and do all that wonderful stuff. And finally, the fans just got into the animal so strong that the WWE people woke up and decided that maybe they should call me George the Animal Steele. And that stuck for a long time, until now.
Now, so the two things that you're most known for in wrestling are the green tongue and you ripping apart and eating the turnbuckles. So we kind of have a two-part question here. What did the turnbuckles taste like? And how long after your match did your tongue stay green?
Well, the tattoo lasts forever. And if you believe that, I've got some oceanfront property for you in Kentucky.
All right. Perfect. I was looking into that.
Actually, what happened was no one, back in those days, we didn't have a creation team that decided the personalities and so on and so forth. What happened with the green tongue is I had a couple of drinks. I didn't want the promoter to know it, so I put a Clorets in my mouth and went on live TV. Now, this is live TV, but it's just now when color TV's coming out. In other words, I was black and white TV, and the color's coming out, and all of a sudden, on your color TV shows up a guy with a strange-looking tongue. People thought their TVs were screwed up. The switchboard lit up, and I kind of laughed about it. I didn't know that I had a green tongue at that time, But when the switchboard lit up, people started talking about it. I realized that I'd done it with a chlorette. So about 3 months later, I did the same thing for my own personal enjoyment and a laugh, and I had the green tongue again. The switchboard lit up again, and from that time on, I had the very best breath in all of wrestling.
Now, you're a pretty intimidating guy in the wrestling ring, but we hear, wrestling is a sport full of practical jokers. Did anyone ever try to pull any pranks on you?
No one ever messed with my body or any of anything in my suitcase or anything like that, because I wouldn't have, that'd have been a problem, a serious problem. I didn't mind a few head game type ribs, but that other stuff that some of the guys pulled, that didn't happen to me, and it wouldn't, because it would be a real problem.
All right.
Not acceptable.
Yep.
Absolutely. Now, you're a two-time Wrestling Hall of Famer, WWE Hall of Fame in '95, and then the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame as well. Are you satisfied with the way your wrestling career turned out?
Oh, yeah. I mean, come on. First of all, I didn't plan on being a wrestler. I never worked at it. It just happened. And somehow I got very good at it. Now, I could wrestle on a mat. I was a wrestling coach for 17 or 18 years in Madison Heights. We won a state championship and had a lot of state champions. But pro wrestling is a bit different, and it come to me fairly natural. At first, when I first saw what it was all about, when I went to the gym, they started showing me how to work. I thought they was challenge my integrity as an athlete. I really didn't like it. But once I learned to relax and understand the art of the work, I really enjoyed professional wrestling and put it in a very high esteem for my life. Just kind of the way it worked.
All right, now you are well known for your involvement with Randy Savage, but people seem to forget you played a major role in the WrestleMania 3 match with Savage and Steamboat. That match is highly regarded as one of the best matches of all time. When you were there watching it live, did you realize just how special that match would turn out to be?
Oh, boy. That match happened to be at the Palace, the Silver Dome in Detroit, which is about 15 minutes from my home where I lived at that time. And the idea that I was going to be in a corner with the Dragon, and Elizabeth was going to be in the other corner, and I was supposed to be schmitting over her, really didn't get me too excited, to be honest with you. I'd have much rather had my own match in my hometown, in the largest event that there ever has been, in an indoor event. And so I was a little bit disappointed in that part of it. And then the match was a great match for the fans, but it was so redundant, overdone so many times, and talked about so much and how they were going to do it, that actually it got kind of boring for me. We didn't know back in that day. That was a new breed doing things a different way. We used to call almost everything that happened in the ring while it was happening. This was all pretty much predetermined, but it was predetermined very well. So my take on it was a little bit different than the fans. So be it. That's just the way it is.
Absolutely. Now,
Randy was an excellent wrestler and a great performer with a great profession. I'm not knocking either one of those guys. That was a great match, just not one that I was excited about being around.
Yeah. Well, so is there a certain match maybe that you were a part of, either early on in your career or later on in your career, that you really, really enjoyed?
I was very blessed once I got the mask off. Now I worked with a lot of guys that you don't know of early on. In fact, Randy Savage's father, Angelo Papa, was one of them in the Detroit area when I was wrestling as a student. So I had great experience there. Then when I came to the WWF and then the WWF, I had an opportunity to wrestle with the greatest of all time, so many of them. I had some great matches in every major arena in the Northeast with Bruno Sammartino, who I think is the greatest champion of all time, regardless of any of them. Mm-hmm. Then I had an opportunity, I worked with the next champion, babyface champion, with Pedro Morales, and I had a short run with him because he only had the title for about a year and a half, 3 years. Then on come Bobby Backlund, who was a great champion, regardless of what people think. He was around there for about 8 or 9 years as a champion, and then I had a short run with the Hulk Hogan. So I covered a long sphere of some great champions. I think that of those I just named, probably the WWF champions, they might have been the greatest of all time. Bruno, I think, had the belt twice, and it covered a long period of time, like I think it was 12 or 13 years. Bobby, the same situation, and then Hulk Hogan changed the business forever with his great charisma and his look in the ring. So, yeah. After that, a lot of guys have changed with the belt and so on and so forth, but I don't know of any of them that has really impacted the business like the ones I just named.
All right. Now, in the world of wrestling today, there seem to be less characters. Do you think that there might be room for a character like the Animal to exist today, maybe an updated version of what you did?
It could be, but business has changed a lot, and the name of the wrestler or the talent is not that important. Vince has done a great job of marketing the name of the company, WWE. It's more like the circus coming to town. And so when the WWE is coming to town, or the circus was coming to town years ago, they didn't put the names of the guys on the high wire up there, or who's going to be in the cage with the lions, all that stuff. It was just part of the circus, and I think that's kind of what's happened to the business now. Whatever's going on during the matches or during the show is just part of the show. It's the WWE show. So I don't know of any name that really is out there that is any bigger than the WWE. Can you think of one wrestler that has a bigger name than the WWE?
No.
And this is Vince McMahon?
No.
I mean, so that's just how I see it.
Sure.
That's not a knock. It's just a great way to do the business.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Now, a lot of people, if they haven't read your book, they may not know, but you've also served sort of as an inspiration probably to a lot of people. You had dyslexia and also Crohn's disease. Now, do people come up to you now and, talk to you about that? Or do you ever talk to, school groups or anything about those sorts of things that you...
Oh, yeah. I have a website, GeorgeTheAnimalSteele.com, and I have people coming on it often talking about the dyslexia. They might have a problem with their children, although their problem that they have today is not anywhere near what I had. Because back when I was a kid in the 40s, in the early 50s, they didn't know what dyslexic was. So it was just okay, go sit in the back of the room. I mean, I was a big dummy, go sit in the back of the room because he couldn't hardly read or write. What they have found out about people with dyslexia, they're basically, they have great memories and they're very, very intelligent people. A lot of lawyers, well, I don't want to go that direction. I don't want to go that direction. But doctors and people, Einstein was very dyslexic. So what can I tell you? Once I figured out what was going on, and I got through Michigan State barely, the book talks about that too. It talks about the dyslexia, then going to Michigan State, not really being able to read or write, having my struggles there. By the time I got out and getting into the high school with teaching and coaching, things are starting to level out a little bit with my dyslexia and my way of handling it. 3 years ago, I was really humbled when I got a phone call from one of the board members at Madison High School where I coached, telling me that they were going to name the stadium after me. That was humbling. And I didn't think it was worthy. And I told them, I said, I don't think you should do that right now. And they said, why not? I said, well, an honor like that should not be given to anyone until after they're dead, because we can still screw up. They said, well, we're going to do it anyhow. We'd like to have you come and take part in it. So I did, and it was a wonderful, humbling experience. But again, to me, that's bigger than the... I'm also in the Michigan Football Coaches Hall of Fame and the Michigan Coaches Hall of Fame. So, those Hall of Fames to me are just as much important as the WWE or the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame. They're all great honors.
Sure. Now, as we mentioned earlier, you're an accomplished actor. How did you decide that you wanted to be on the big screen?
Well, I didn't make that decision like everything else. It just happened.
Sure.
I got a phone call from Tim Burton, telling me that they're going to make this movie, Ed Wood, and that I looked like one of the major characters, Tor Johnson, who was a wrestler, and that I looked an awful lot like him, and that was kind of flattering. I thought, wow, I look like a movie star. And then when I finally got the part and started researching it, I found out that Tor Johnson was the first guy to do monster movies without makeup. What can I tell you?
Now, about that, I found a little piece of information. I guess that they weren't accounting on you to being so quick and so athletic whenever they filmed it. So they actually made you, I don't know if this is true or not, this is just something I read. They actually made you wear things to slow you down a bit when you were filming. Is that true?
I have a pair of shoes yet that they had on me that elevated me like 5 inches taller because Tor Johnson was 6'9", and I'm only at that time 6'2". I'm still shrinking now, but yeah, that was clumsy to walk in, and they dressed me some strange stuff, and yeah, it was. But you know what? The movie won 2 Academies. It was a black and white movie. One of the accomplishments of Tim Burton and Johnny Depp was just outstanding. And who won the Academy? Come on.
Was it Martin Landau?
Hey, Martin Landau, thank you.
No problem.
There we go.
We're supposed to need all the help we can get.
Hey, that's all right.
What is it that Jim Myers enjoys doing with his spare time?
Now I'm very involved in my my church work. I do a lot on the internet with my website. I'm involved with a lot of different people in a lot of different areas. It's just my way of trying to give back in many different ways. I still don't look that bad. People ask me, well, do you still wrestle? And I say, yes, to get out of bed. But I've just been blessed. I'm 78 years old now, so, my life has changed a whole lot, and it's really become more and more positive. I have a great peace with my faith in Jesus, and very comfortable with where I'm at in my life now, and ready for whatever happens.
Well, we also know that you're a huge baseball fan, minor league and major league. Are you a Detroit sports fan, though?
Oh, absolutely. I even love the Detroit Tigers and the
Oh,
Lions and the Pistons. And the Lions, when I was a kid in the 50s, they were pretty good. I'm hoping that they get to a Super Bowl before I pass on, but that's getting to be a little tough. When they let Sue get away, I thought, oh boy, here we go.
well, we definitely want to just thank you so much for coming on today. I know that you're a busy gentleman. You mentioned that you have a website, GeorgeTheAnimalSteel.com. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is there any other thing that you have out there, or do you mainly just communicate through there?
I do a lot of my communicating. I was going out and doing a lot of speaking engagements and doing personal appearances and shows like we're going to be doing in Rhode Island. But with my health challenges, I haven't done anything for a year. I just cut everything down. The guy that I'm coming in with, Joe, is bringing me in, and he's just a good guy. He's bringing me my wife with me, which makes life a lot easier for me and her. So, I'm looking forward to this event probably more than any because it's been so long since I've done anything.
Well, we'll be at both of those. We cannot wait to talk with you some more. We thank you so much for being on today. And June 27th in Providence, Rhode Island, and June 28th in Fishkill, New York. So, Mr. Jim Myers, George the Animal Steel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, no, thank you for having time for this old guy. I appreciate it.